So let's talk about maybe like with respect to there being many different ways, different channels we could tune into on this next question, or like to your address of this next question. But what do you see as the value of this of and I don't mean just like the general value of that telepathic psychedelic mind meld experiences can happen, but I mean in the sense of going in intentionally to connect with another in this way. What is the value of this kind of intentional journey in comparison and contrast to journeys that are more focused towards the self rather than towards sharing?
Right. Well, I think there's a few layers to this. The biggest one is finding a new intimacy that is just unexpected and never thought possible. This is basically to become completely naked to the other and show all of oneself, which, a lot of people are not going to be comfortable with. And that's why
Mm.
I'm suggesting it's an advanced practice. Um, but in that space, we can find a loving connection that we never thought we could find. And it's going deeper. And it's a deeper exploration of consciousness. It's a deeper exploration of our porosity. It's a deeper exploration of us in terms of unity consciousness. And, we see deeper into each other. We see, our warts, we see the other person's warts more deeply. But, as we do the work and we drop into experiencing that ourselves and the other person is sharing in that, I think it brings a deeper loving understanding of each other as humans and a deeper compassion ultimately. And I think that's a big piece of the work is being more compassionate. And I'm hoping that the more we can break down these barriers of separation, as we're individuals, where you see, particularly it really stands out in the United States right now in terms of greed. Trump is all about world domination. And who knows? Like, maybe in the next year or two, as weird as it sounds, like there might be an invasion of Canada. Like that's the way he's talking, right?
Yeah, I know.
And so, you might be an American in the not too far distant future. And of course, that's highly unlikely, but unfortunately, it's something that's possible. Canada and the U.S. have fought wars in the past, like going back a couple hundred years, and it's my hope that the United States wakes up because it is an imperialist country. It's a neo-colonialist state that has, throughout almost all of its history, gone around the world killing people. I mean, there's a mass genocide in just creating the United States of the Native
Hmm.
Americans. And it's absolutely horrific. And unfortunately, Americans do have, we're the archetype of the warrior. And, so much of what drives Americans is wanting to be number one in the world, which is associated with greed and various other uh, other various dark things. And so, yeah, again, in my hope with this, and of course, there's others doing it in their own ways to break down the separation of the individual and to see, how much we have in common, and that there is a need to be more loving and compassionate towards each other, and yeah, dropping more into what does the world community need, as opposed to, the construct. And ultimately, this is the funny thing with, nation states is that it's a fairly recent construct, the last really 300, 400 years. And, all this nationalism and people identifying as, I'm an American, I'm a Canadian, or whatever it is, right? It's a bit ridiculous when you start to, to zoom out and see the nature of what we are as a species and how interconnected we are. So again, my hope in this work is a deeper, loving, compassionate relationing amongst humans.
Mm. I'm going to make a couple comments there that sort of like both to what you said. Um, One of which is, you're talking about us in our connection with each other. And I think to take it one step past that is also our connection with the non-human world. Psychedelics are incredible for that. In fact, I would say that that is a much less transgressive premise, is to suggest that people taking psychedelics might feel like they're connecting with a living, breathing being that is a tree or a plant or the sky or something to this effect. But that kind of our isolation, our sort of was it like Sky Otter describes it as a sort of like the tomb that we've encased ourselves in by isolating ourselves from the womb of the world of the planet is one that is like very stifling and a significant contributor, I think, on many levels to the problems that we're facing and sort of continuously propagating on the planet. And I think that when I think about shared consciousness or telepathic mind melds, we're talking about other people and disincarnate entities and this kind of thing. But I think a very legitimate case can be made to extend that kind of phenomenon to interactions with the natural world and the various inhabitants, non-human inhabitants of the natural world, as being an expression of a kind of telepathic mind meld or a psychedelic mind meld. I mean, I'm not necessarily trying to put that on you or your claims here, but that's something that I would extend it to in my own perspective.
No, that's beautifully said, and I absolutely agree with you. And this is something that's been happening more recently for me in like post production of the book. But when doing psychedelics, I've been connecting, as strange as this is going to sound, but to planets, within
Mm.
our solar system, dominantly Saturn. And again, I don't know why. There's a lot of mystery behind this stuff, but and also to planet Earth, and it's a living being, of course, and we're creations at some level, of course, of the planet. So yeah, again, we are all interconnected, and the planet and nature is part of that.
It makes me think of Alan Watts. Actually, I was just referencing this in a section of the book that I'm presently writing, and in one of Alan Watts' perspective is on the language we use to say like we come into this world. Oh, when we're born, we come into this world, and he says that this is actually incorrect. In his mind, we don't come into this world; we come out of this world. In the same way that an apple tree apples, Earth peoples. It does many other things, but one of the things it does is it peoples. So we come out of this world the same way an apple comes out of an apple tree. And I mean, then he also extends it to whatever the intelligence of the universe is, that sort of like all of existence as we are able to observe it and see it, comes, out of the intelligence of the universe. So too are we, beings that come out of the intelligence of the universe. Um, so it's making me think of that there with your connection with Saturn, like whatever it is that, brought the solar system into being. If we are that, then there's a possibility to as much connect with the earth as whatever it is that has us, with our other celestial neighbors.
Yeah, no, that resonates again too. And just to add another layer of that, I mean, yeah, the universe giving birth to all of us. So if you think, if you're someone who believes in soul or spirit, and again, we can play with definitions there, but as the soul is something that journeys through lifetimes, it's quite possible. Again, I'm not going to be definitive on any of this, but it's possible that we were born somewhere else in the universe, and that we arrived as spirits or souls on planet Earth, and that planet Earth gave birth to our bodies and everything that's happened throughout the species, throughout all of our history on Earth. But at the same time, it's possible that we may have chosen to come and work with Earth, um, in whatever kind of weird, mysterious way that is occurring. I mean, I think history will play that out over the course of maybe hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of years yet. But we are part of the evolution of all of that, maybe at both a soul level and at a physical level, and that is potentially a co-creative process with the planet
Mm.
as a living being.
Mm. The other thing I was going to say earlier from your comments around, like the one of the values of this kind of work is to sort of get beyond the sort of encapsulation of the self, and like start to really feel ourselves as and with each other, is some work that was being done. Um, Antoine Saka and Lior Roseman, they did some research where they were going in and observing ayahuasca ceremonies that were happening I mean, this is a while ago, probably extra relevant now, but ayahuasca ceremonies that were happening in the West Bank, so the Israel-Palestine zone, and
Uh-huh.
that they were mixed groups. They were groups of people who were both Jewish and Muslim or Palestinians and Israelis, and also Christians. And that they were just happened to be in the same group. Like that was the same circle. And that despite the fact that the intention wasn't to, like process their relationships, they were all there for their own independent reasons. They tracked the 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 experiences people were somewhat spontaneously having that were relevant to the deeply internally embedded conflict between Israelis and Palestinians, and some of the experiences they were having, and how it created greater empathy and understanding for each other and themselves in the conflict over time, and the consequence that seemed to accidentally have on conflict resolution. Because, I mean, reading some of these experiences, I come to tears. I don't think anyone with any connection to their heart could not, in reading some of these experiences. But the result being, that they end up having a greater sense of like empathy for the consequences of, decades, maybe hundreds, thousands of years of turbulence between peoples playing out in the individuals today and themselves.
Yeah, I've read those studies, and I'm filled with hope when I read those. And of course, when we look at the conflagration of Israel Palestine right now, I mean, there's so much more work that needs to be done there. I mean, it's just heartbreaking to see what I identify as a genocide now of the Palestinians. Of course, a lot of people have mixed views on that, but I can't see it any other way. I mean, it's it's just full on mass destruction. And when you start talking about moving them to another location, I mean, that's not unlike what Hitler was talking about in terms of moving Jews out of Europe to Madagascar. Strangely
Mm,
enough, that was something that was on the table before the final solution. So
mm,
it's horrific what we're watching in the world right now, and have watched for many years. Right? I mean, this is the thing, is that humans have done some really nasty stuff in World War I and World War II, and all the ugliness around that associated with European colonialist powers basically fighting for number one. It's not like Germany was unique in any of this, right? I mean, Britain was number one, and it was just other Europeans vying for that number one spot, pole position, which of course the U.S. is now in. Um,
And it's not like Britain hadn't worked hard to get that number one by taking their position and extracting from the world and dominating elsewhere.
yeah, they
Uh,
had committed their own genocides
yeah.
around the world, if we want to be frank about it. Of course, in the West, we don't really read that history because they wrote the history and they've kind of um, de-emphasized, or kind of written it out of history about how horrifically they treated, say, the people in India and various other colonies. Um, but yeah, that just speaks to the horrors of the world and how they're playing out in its very recent history. Within our parents' or grandparents' lifetimes, that some of the worst atrocities in all of human history have just occurred. If we look at the timeline, tens of millions of people dying in each of the world wars, and it's just absolutely mind blowing and sad and yeah,
Mhm.
terrible.
So, uh, try not to be too playful here while simultaneously not wanting to miss out on the ability to still enjoy and appreciate play in the midst of tragedy and
Mm,
crisis. But I want to take this talk about, I'm like, okay,